Across the world's hunting waters, shimmering coasts, deep oceans, and remote river mouths, shark attacks remain among the most terrifying encounters ever recorded. From cage dives turned deadly to bold adventurers caught off guard, these predators strike with unmatched speed and ferocity. Victims are often left with scars, both physical and mental, that last a lifetime. In this video, we dive into 6 shocking shark attack ordeals where survival teetered on a knife's edge. From a great white smashing into a cage to a spearfisher fending off a lemon shark with his bare hands. The waters off Gansbaai, South Africa, had gained international acclaim as a great white shark diving mecca. On June 4, 2025, this small fishing town, situated roughly 2 hours east of Cape Town, sat at the edge of what marine researchers called Shark Alley, a narrow channel between Dyer Island and Geyser Rock, where the ocean's apex predators gathered in impressive numbers. The area's unique geography created perfect hunting conditions, with Cape fur seals congregating on nearby islands, drawing great whites from across the southern Atlantic. For decades, tour operators had capitalized on this natural phenomenon, offering tourists the chance to observe these magnificent creatures from the relative safety of reinforced steel cages. Elena Marchetti, a spirited 10-year-old from Milan, had convinced her mother, Francesca, to book this once-in-a-lifetime adventure during their trip to South Africa. The girl possessed an insatiable curiosity about marine life that had begun with nature documentaries and grown into a genuine passion. Francesca, initially hesitant about exposing her young daughter to such an intense experience, eventually agreed after extensive research into the tour company's safety record. The operators assured them that their cages had undergone rigorous testing and had never experienced a serious breach in 15 years of operation. The morning expedition began at dawn, with their vessel, the Sea Stalker, cutting through choppy waters toward the prime viewing area. Captain Willem Botha, a weathered local with 3 decades of shark diving experience, briefed the 12 passengers on safety protocols while his crew prepared the diving equipment. The cage itself measured roughly 10 feet long, 6 feet wide, and 8 feet deep, constructed from heavy-gauge steel bars with gaps wide enough to allow clear photography, but supposedly too narrow for even the largest great white to penetrate. Elena bounced with excitement as she and her mother donned their wetsuits, masks, and snorkels. The water temperature hovered around 16 degrees Celsius, requiring thick neoprene protection against the Atlantic chill. Francesca noticed her daughter's hands trembling slightly, although it was unclear whether the tremor was due to cold or anticipation. The crew lowered the cage into the dark water, its bright yellow flotation devices keeping it stable at the surface while allowing occupants to submerge their heads for underwater viewing. The mother and daughter entered the cage together, joining 2 other tourists who were already positioned inside. The steel structure felt solid beneath their feet, the metal bars reassuringly thick. Almost immediately, the first great white appeared, its massive form materializing from the blue-green depths like a living torpedo. Elena gasped through her snorkel as the 14-foot female glided past, her dark eyes seeming to assess the strange contraption and its human occupants. The shark's initial passes were cautious, almost elegant in their measured approach. She circled the cage at a respectful distance, occasionally drawing closer to investigate the scent trail left by the crew's chum bucket. Elena pressed her face against the bars, marveling at the creature's prehistoric grace and raw power. Francesca remained close to her daughter, one protective arm draped across the girl's shoulders while she too watched in fascination. The situation changed dramatically when a second, much larger great white arrived on the scene. This massive male, estimated at nearly 18 feet in length, displayed far more aggressive behavior than his smaller companion. He approached the cage directly, his scarred snout bumping against the steel bars with surprising force. The impact sent vibrations through the entire structure, making the occupants grab onto the framework for stability. What happened next would haunt Elena and Francesca for years to come. The enormous shark, apparently irritated by the cage's presence, or perhaps attracted by the scent of the occupants themselves, launched itself at the barrier with unprecedented violence. His massive head struck the cage's corner joint with the force of a battering ram, targeting a section where recent maintenance had left the welds slightly weakened. The sickening sound of bending metal filled the water as several bars separated from their mounting points. Elena watched in horror as the predator's massive head forced its way through the newly created gap, its powerful jaws snapping mere inches from her face. Francesca screamed into her regulator, the sound muffled but filled with maternal terror as she tried to pull her daughter away from the encroaching threat. The shark's movements became increasingly frantic as he realized his predicament. His massive body was too large to fit fully into the cage, but his head and powerful front fins had breached the barrier. In his struggle to free himself, his jaws clamped down on Elena's extended forearm, the rows of razor-sharp teeth penetrating her wetsuit and flesh with devastating efficiency. Pain exploded through Elena's body as the shark's bite compressed her arm, the pressure threatening to snap bones. Blood began clouding the water around them, the metallic scent likely driving the predator into an even greater frenzy. Francesca abandoned all caution, using her bare hands to strike at the shark's snout and gills while screaming for help from the surface crew. The struggle lasted what felt like hours but spanned less than 2 minutes. Elena, despite her youth and terror, managed to remain conscious and even attempted to push against the shark's head with her free hand. The great white thrashed violently, his powerful tail creating turbulence that rocked the damaged cage dangerously. Finally, whether from confusion, pain, or simple frustration, the massive predator released his grip and backed away from the cage. He disappeared into the depths as suddenly as he had appeared, leaving behind a scene of chaos and blood. Elena floated semi-conscious in her mother's arms, her wetsuit torn and her arm bearing deep puncture wounds that would require immediate medical attention. The crew hauled the damaged cage to the surface with unprecedented speed, their years of emergency training finally put to the ultimate test. Elena was rushed aboard the vessel, where the ship's first aid officer worked to control the bleeding while Captain Botha radioed for immediate helicopter evacuation. Elena survived her ordeal, though she required multiple surgeries to repair the damage to her arm and hand. The incident garnered international attention, leading to enhanced safety regulations for shark cage diving operations throughout South Africa. The experience, while traumatic, ultimately strengthened Elena's fascination with marine life, though she would never again venture into their domain without proper respect for their lethal capabilities. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly in all directions from the USS Leviathan's position, approximately 200 nautical miles southwest of Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, in the summer of 2015. This particular stretch of deep blue water had served as a training ground for the United States Navy's most elite diving units for over 4 decades. Petty Officer First Class Marcus Delacroix had volunteered for this particular deep-sea training mission, eager to demonstrate his expertise in underwater hull maintenance procedures. The 28-year-old Navy diver from Louisiana possessed an impressive service record, having completed over 300 successful deep-water dives during his 8-year career. His specialty involved complex welding and cutting operations on submarine hulls, skills that proved invaluable during both routine maintenance and emergency repairs in hostile environments. The training exercise simulated a scenario where a submarine had suffered minor hull damage while submerged, requiring immediate underwater repairs to prevent catastrophic flooding. Marcus and his dive partner, Seaman Rodriguez, descended to a depth of 180 feet, where a decommissioned submarine hull section had been strategically positioned for training purposes. The mock repair involved cutting away damaged plating and welding replacement sections into place, all while maintaining neutral buoyancy and managing limited air supplies. Marcus methodically approached his assigned section of the hull, his movements deliberate and economical to conserve oxygen. The underwater cutting torch ignited successfully, its bright flame creating an otherworldly glow in the dark water. Sparks cascaded downward like falling stars as he began sectioning the predetermined area, completely focused on achieving clean, precise cuts that would allow for proper patch installation. The oceanic white-tip shark appeared without warning, materializing from the blue void beyond the range of the dive lights. This particular species was notorious among marine biologists for its bold and inquisitive nature, as well as its tendency to investigate unfamiliar objects or disturbances in its territory. The approaching predator measured approximately 10 feet in length, its distinctive white-tipped fins visible as it began circling the work area with growing interest. Initially, Marcus barely noticed the shark's presence, his attention consumed by the demanding technical work at hand. Rodriguez spotted the creature first and attempted to signal his partner, but Marcus remained engrossed in his cutting operation. The oceanic white-tipped circles grew progressively tighter. Its behavior shifted from casual curiosity to a focused investigation of these strange intruders in its domain. The shark's first approach was almost gentle, a slow glide past Marcus's position that brought it within arm's reach of the working diver. The predator seemed particularly interested in the bright sparks and unusual sounds emanating from the cutting torch. phenomena unlike anything it had previously encountered in these deep waters. Marcus finally registered the creature's presence when its massive shadow passed directly over his work area, temporarily blocking the artificial lighting. What followed was a lightning-fast strike that caught Marcus completely off guard. The oceanic whitetip lunged forward with explosive power, its powerful jaws clamping down on Marcus's left leg just above the knee. The shark's teeth penetrated the thick neoprene of his diving suit. They punctured the underlying flesh, sending waves of crushing pain through the diver's body, despite the protective gear's considerable thickness. Marcus's training immediately kicked in, overriding the natural panic response that threatened to overwhelm his rational thinking. He maintained his grip on the cutting torch while using his free hand to reach for the dive knife, which was secured to his belt. The shark thrashed violently, its powerful body creating turbulence that threatened to tear Marcus away from his anchor point on the submarine hull. The predator's bite pressure was immense, capable of easily crushing bone if it were allowed to maintain its grip. Marcus could feel warm blood seeping into his diving suit as the shark's teeth found purchase in his leg muscle. Fighting against both pain and the creature's thrashing movements, he managed to extract his dive knife. He began striking at the shark's sensitive snout area, targeting the ampullae of Lorenzini, which sharks use for electrical detection. Rodriguez immediately responded to his partner's distress, abandoning his workstation to assist with the emergency. He activated the team's acoustic deterrent device, a piece of equipment designed specifically for such encounters. The device emitted high-frequency sound pulses that proved effective in disrupting the shark's attack behavior, causing it to release its grip and retreat several feet from the immediate area. The oceanic whitetip circled once more, apparently considering a second attack. Still, the continued acoustic deterrent signals seemed to convince it that these particular prey items were more trouble than they were worth. The massive predator gradually faded back into the blue depths, disappearing as suddenly as it had arrived. Marcus's ascent to the surface required careful decompression stops despite his injuries, as rapid ascent could have resulted in potentially fatal decompression sickness. His dive partner maintained close contact throughout the controlled emergency ascent, monitoring Marcus's condition while remaining alert for any sign of the shark's return. Upon reaching the surface, Marcus was immediately transferred to the ship's medical facility, where Navy corpsmen worked to clean and suture his wounds. The shark's teeth had created multiple deep punctures in his leg, but fortunately, they had missed major arteries and bones. His diving suit had provided sufficient protection to prevent a truly catastrophic injury, although the psychological impact of the encounter would require considerable time to process. Marcus returned to diving duties 6 weeks later, though he admitted that deep-water operations would never feel quite the same. The encounter had taught him valuable lessons about maintaining situational awareness even during complex technical operations, and he subsequently became an advocate for enhanced shark safety protocols during Navy diving operations. The Zambezi River Delta system along Mozambique's coastline had gained international recognition among adventure kayakers by 2012, offering a unique combination of challenging waters and spectacular wildlife viewing opportunities. Lucas Brandão, a 34-year-old adventure photographer from Maputo, had spent 3 days documenting the delta's wildlife when he decided to explore the river mouth's more challenging waters. His lightweight sea kayak, a custom-built fiberglass model designed for extended expeditions, had served him well during previous assignments in similarly demanding environments. Lucas possessed extensive experience in whitewater kayaking and had completed solo expeditions along much of Mozambique's coastline over the past decade. The morning started promisingly, with calm conditions and excellent visibility in the clear water. Lucas had launched his kayak from a secluded beach approximately 2 kilometers upstream from the main river mouth, planning to photograph the area where the Zambezi's muddy waters met the crystal-clear Indian Ocean. His waterproof camera equipment was secured in specially designed dry bags, positioned for quick access while maintaining proper weight distribution in the narrow craft. The tidal conditions were perfect for his planned route, with the outgoing tide creating a moderate current that would assist his downstream progress while leaving enough slack water near the shoreline for detailed photography work. Lucas had timed his departure to coincide with peak wildlife activity when fish populations were most active and predators were likely to be hunting in the shallow areas. As he paddled through the main channel, Lucas noticed unusual disturbances in the water around him. Small fish were breaking the surface in erratic patterns, their panicked movements suggesting the presence of larger predators below. He paused his paddling to observe the phenomenon more closely, reaching for his camera to document what appeared to be a significant feeding event taking place in the deeper water nearby. The bull shark's first appearance was so sudden and violent that Lucas barely had time to register what was happening. The massive predator, estimated at nearly 12 feet in length, exploded upward from the murky depths directly beneath his kayak. Its powerful jaws clamped down on the fiberglass hull with crushing force, the sound of splintering composite material audible above the water's surface. Lucas felt his kayak shudder and begin to list as the shark's teeth penetrated the hull's thin skin. The creature's initial bite had punched several holes through the bottom of the craft, allowing water to pour into the cockpit area. The bull shark thrashed violently, its powerful body creating massive turbulence that threatened to capsize the damaged kayak entirely. Fighting to maintain his balance in the rapidly deteriorating situation, Lucas attempted to use his paddle as a defensive weapon, striking at the shark's head and snout area. The bull shark responded by releasing its grip on the hull and immediately lunging at the paddle itself, its jaws snapping shut on the carbon fiber blade with enough force to sever it completely. The kayak's structural integrity was failing rapidly under the combined assault of the shark's attacks and the increasing water intrusion. Lucas could feel the craft beginning to break apart beneath him as the fiberglass hull cracked along stress lines that the initial bite had compromised. The shark circled aggressively, its dorsal fin cutting through the surface as it prepared for another attack. With his kayak sinking and his primary means of defense destroyed, Lucas made the desperate decision to abandon the craft and attempt to swim toward the nearest shoreline. The bull shark immediately detected his movement in the water and moved to intercept, its powerful tail driving it forward with frightening speed and agility. Lucas's entry into the water triggered an immediate escalation in the shark's aggressive behavior. The predator approached within mere feet of the struggling swimmer, its massive head breaking the surface as it investigated this new development. Lucas could see the creature's dark eyes and rows of triangular teeth as it passed close enough to graze his arm with its rough skin. The bull shark's next pass was more direct, its jaws snapping shut inches from Lucas's torso as he kicked frantically to avoid the attack. The near miss left several scratches along his ribs where the shark's teeth had made contact with his wetsuit, though fortunately without penetrating the neoprene material deeply enough to cause serious injury. Adrenaline and desperation drove Lucas to employ every survival technique he could remember from his extensive outdoor training. He splashed aggressively with his arms while shouting at the top of his lungs, hoping to confuse or intimidate the predator. The technique seemed to have some effect, as the bull shark hesitated momentarily before its next approach. Using this brief respite, Lucas began swimming toward shore with powerful strokes, maintaining the aggressive splashing and vocalizations that seemed to keep the shark at bay. The predator continued to circle at a slightly greater distance, apparently weighing the potential risks and rewards of continuing its attack against this unusually combative prey. The swim to safety covered approximately 150 meters through increasingly shallow water, with the bull shark maintaining its pursuit until Lucas reached depths of less than 1 meter. Even then, the predator continued patrolling the deeper water nearby, its presence visible as it waited for any opportunity to resume its attack. Lucas finally reached the muddy shoreline, his body shaking from a combination of physical exhaustion and psychological trauma. His destroyed kayak had completely sunk by this point, taking with it several $1,000s worth of camera equipment and camping gear. The encounter had left him with numerous scrapes and minor cuts, though no serious injuries that required immediate medical attention. The incident was reported to local authorities, who subsequently issued warnings to other water sports enthusiasts about the increased activity of bull sharks in the area. Lucas's experience became part of ongoing research into human-shark interactions in Mozambique's coastal waters, contributing valuable data about bull shark behavior in estuarine environments. Despite the traumatic nature of his encounter, Lucas eventually returned to kayaking, although he never again ventured into known bull shark habitat without proper safety equipment and communication. By 2018, the pristine waters off Rottnest Island, Western Australia, had become increasingly popular among social media influencers, drawn by the location's crystal-clear visibility and diverse marine life. This small island, situated approximately 18 kilometers from the mainland port city of Fremantle, boasted some of the Indian Ocean's most spectacular underwater scenery. The area's unique geography, featuring limestone reefs, sandy channels, and deep-water drop-offs, created ideal conditions for both marine wildlife and underwater photography. Local authorities had documented an increase in great white shark activity around the island's southern coastline, where seasonal migrations brought these apex predators close to shore in search of abundant seal populations. Despite repeated warnings and the installation of shark detection equipment, the area's natural beauty continued to attract adventure seekers and content creators who hoped to capture dramatic footage for their online audiences. Jenna Kowalski, a 23-year-old social media personality from Perth, had built a substantial following on various platforms through her extreme adventure content. Her TikTok account, which featured increasingly dangerous stunts and encounters with wildlife, had accumulated over 2 million followers who eagerly anticipated each new upload. Jenna's content strategy relied heavily on pushing boundaries and creating shocking moments that generated viral engagement and attracted new subscribers to her various social media channels. The fateful expedition began as a planned collaboration with several other local influencers, designed to create content around swimming with sharks in their natural environment. Jenna had chartered a small dive boat operated by Jake Morrison, a local marine tour guide who had reluctantly agreed to the outing despite his reservations about the group's stated intentions. Morrison had explicitly warned his passengers about recent shark sightings and insisted on strict safety protocols, including staying in the boat while sharks were present. The morning conditions were nearly perfect for observing marine wildlife, with minimal wind, excellent visibility extending beyond 30 meters, and calm seas that allowed for steady filming. The group had traveled to a known aggregation site where great whites were frequently spotted, particularly during the winter months when they followed migrating whale pods along the continental shelf. Within an hour of reaching their destination, the first great white shark appeared, a magnificent 14-foot female that glided gracefully through the clear water approximately 50 meters from their anchored vessel. The creature's presence immediately triggered excited activity among the influencers, who began filming frantically, while Morrison provided commentary about the shark's behavior and the importance of maintaining a respectful distance. Jenna, however, had different plans for her content creation. Despite Morrison's explicit warnings and the obvious danger, she announced her intention to enter the water for close-up footage that would differentiate her content from standard wildlife observation videos. Her companions initially protested, but Jenna dismissed their concerns as she set up her waterproof camera equipment and prepared to enter the water. Morrison's attempts to prevent Jenna from leaving the boat became increasingly desperate as she moved toward the vessel's edge. He explained the legal liability issues, the extreme danger posed by the shark's presence, and the potentially fatal consequences of her planned actions. Jenna responded that she had researched great white behavior online and believed the risk was manageable if she remained calm and moved slowly. The moment Jenna entered the water, the great white's behavior changed dramatically. The shark, which had been cruising at a leisurely pace in the distance, immediately altered course and began approaching the new disturbance with obvious interest. Its movements became more purposeful and direct, displaying the focused attention that marine biologists recognized as investigative behavior that often preceded more aggressive interactions. Jenna initially appeared confident as she swam toward the approaching predator, her waterproof camera capturing footage that she believed would generate millions of views and establish her reputation as the most daring wildlife influencer on social media. She moved with deliberate slowness, attempting to emulate techniques she had seen in documentaries, while completely failing to recognize the warning signs in the shark's posture and movement patterns. The shark's approach was methodical and calculating, displaying none of the casual indifference that characterized most human shark encounters. This particular individual showed clear signs of heightened interest, possibly triggered by Jenna's surface movements or by stress chemicals released into the water. The predator circled once at a distance of approximately 10 meters before beginning a more direct approach. When Jenna reached out to touch the shark's snout, apparently believing this would create dramatic content while demonstrating her fearlessness, she crossed a critical threshold in the predator's threat assessment. The great white's response was immediate and devastating, its powerful jaws snapping shut on Jenna's extended forearm with crushing force that shattered bone and severed major blood vessels. The attack's violence was shocking in its suddenness and intensity. The shark began thrashing immediately after making contact, its powerful body twisting and rolling in the water while maintaining its grip on Jenna's arm. The predator's behavior suggested it was attempting to disorient and weaken its prey through violent manipulation, a hunting technique commonly observed when great whites attacked seals. Jenna's screams carried clearly across the water to her horrified companions, who watched helplessly as the shark dragged her beneath the surface. Morrison immediately started the boat's engines while the other influencers attempted to film the attack. their cameras capturing the spreading blood, slick and occasional glimpses of the ongoing struggle below the surface. The shark released its initial grip only to attack again, this time targeting Jenna's shoulder and torso area. The second bite was even more destructive than the first, with the predator's teeth penetrating vital organs and causing massive internal trauma. Jenna's struggles became progressively weaker, as blood loss and shock began to take their toll on her body's systems. Morrison managed to maneuver the boat closer to the attack site, where Jenna's companions made desperate attempts to pull her from the water. The shark had finally released its grip and disappeared into the depths, apparently satisfied that the threat had been neutralized or perhaps disturbed by the boat's proximity and engine noise. Jenna was unconscious when they hauled her aboard, her body bearing horrific injuries that were clearly beyond the scope of basic first aid. Morrison immediately radioed for emergency helicopter evacuation, while the other passengers attempted to control bleeding and maintain vital signs using the boat's limited medical supplies. Despite heroic efforts by emergency responders and trauma surgeons at the hospital, Jenna succumbed to her injuries approximately 3 hours after the attack. The massive blood loss and organ damage proved too extensive for medical intervention, even with the sophisticated trauma care available at one of Australia's premier medical facilities. The incident sparked intense debate about social media culture and the lengths to which content creators would go to generate viral material. Jenna's final video, recovered from her waterproof camera, became evidence in subsequent investigations rather than the viral content she had intended to create. Her death prompted new regulations regarding marine wildlife interactions and served as a stark reminder that nature's apex predators demanded respect rather than reckless attempts at fame. The coastal waters off Queensland's Sunshine Coast were already a favorite among water sports enthusiasts by 2008, known for their perfect surfing and wakeboarding conditions. This particular stretch of Australia's eastern seaboard featured consistent wind patterns, relatively protected waters behind barrier islands, and a thriving marine ecosystem that supported a diverse range of recreational activities. Sarah Blackwood, a 26-year-old professional water skiing instructor from Brisbane, had traveled to the area for a weekend training camp with several of her advanced students. Her reputation in competitive water skiing circles was well established, having won multiple state championships and represented Australia in international competitions. Sarah's expertise in high-speed water sports was matched by her thorough understanding of marine safety protocols, making her a sought-after instructor for serious athletes. The training session was scheduled to focus on advanced techniques for tournament-level competition, including high-speed turns, jump approaches, and complex wake maneuvering. Sarah had selected this particular location for its consistent water conditions and minimal boat traffic, factors that were crucial for maintaining the precision required in competitive water skiing. Her support boat, operated by experienced driver Marcus Chen, was equipped with specialized tournament rigging and safety equipment. The morning's training program had proceeded smoothly, with Sarah demonstrating various techniques while her students observed from the boat. Water conditions were excellent, with minimal wind chop and visibility extending well beyond normal safety requirements. The planned exercises were designed to push performance boundaries while maintaining strict safety margins, a balance that required constant attention to environmental conditions and equipment status. Sarah was in the middle of an advanced slalom run, carving aggressive turns at speeds approaching 60 kilometers per hour, when the tiger shark struck without warning. The massive predator, later estimated at nearly 15 feet in length, had been attracted by the boat's wake and the unusual disturbance patterns created by Sarah's high-speed maneuvering. The shark's initial attack targeted the wakeboard's tow rope rather than Sarah herself, possibly mistaking the taut line for a large fish or marine mammal. The creature's powerful jaws clamped down on the rope approximately 10 meters behind Sarah's position, instantly creating massive tension that jerked her off balance and sent her tumbling into the churning water at high speed. Sarah's impact with the water was violent and disorienting, her body skipping across the surface before plunging beneath the waves near a rocky outcropping that marked the channel's edge. The jagged limestone formations, worn smooth by centuries of wave action, presented immediate danger as Sarah's momentum carried her toward the submerged hazards. Her left arm struck the rocky bottom with considerable force, the sharp coral formations and limestone edges shredding her wetsuit and scoring deep gashes along her forearm and shoulder. Blood immediately began seeping from multiple lacerations, creating a scent trail that would inevitably attract additional marine predators to the area. The tiger shark, having destroyed the tow rope, began circling the area where Sarah had disappeared beneath the surface. Its behavior indicated heightened interest in the blood and disturbance patterns, with the predator's distinctive swimming pattern becoming more focused and deliberate as it homed in on the new stimulus. Sarah surfaced approximately 20 meters from the impact site, gasping for air while simultaneously trying to assess her injuries and locate the support boat. Blood was streaming from her wounded arm, mixing with the salt water and creating visible trails that spread rapidly in the current. Her immediate priority was reaching safety before the shark could locate and investigate her position. Marcus Chen had immediately throttled down the boat's engines and begun maneuvering toward Sarah's position. But the process required careful navigation to avoid the rocky areas where she had landed. The rescue operation was complicated by the need to maintain a sufficient distance from the submerged hazards while positioning the boat for a safe recovery. The tiger shark's next approach was more direct and purposeful, its massive form visible beneath the surface as it investigated the source of the blood trail. Sarah caught sight of the predator's distinctive pattern just meters away. She began employing aggressive defensive tactics, splashing violently with her uninjured arm while shouting to attract the attention of the support boat. Her defensive display seemed to confuse the shark temporarily, causing it to hesitate approximately 5 meters from her position. The predator circled once more, apparently assessing this unusual prey response, before making a more committed approach that brought it within striking distance. Sarah's second encounter with the tiger shark was far more direct than the first. The massive predator lunged forward with explosive power, its jaws snapping shut mere centimeters from her torso as she desperately twisted away from the attack. The shark's rough skin made contact with her injured arm, adding to the existing abrasions while demonstrating the creature's impressive size and power. The near miss galvanized Sarah's survival instincts, driving her to swim with desperate intensity toward the approaching rescue boat. Every stroke sent fresh waves of pain through her injured arm, but adrenaline and fear provided the motivation needed to maintain her pace despite the growing fatigue and blood loss. Marcus successfully maneuvered the boat into position for rescue, cutting the engines to avoid propeller injury while extending a boarding ladder toward Sarah's position. The tiger shark made one final approach during the recovery process, its dorsal fin visible as it passed within 3 meters of the boat before disappearing into deeper water. Sarah was hauled aboard in a state of near exhaustion, her injuries requiring immediate first aid to control bleeding and prevent shock. The lacerations on her arm were extensive but had avoided major arteries, allowing for successful treatment at the local medical facility, where she received over 40 stitches and a comprehensive course of antibiotics to prevent infection. The incident was thoroughly investigated by marine safety authorities, who determined that the attack was likely triggered by the unusual disturbance patterns created by high-speed water skiing equipment. Sarah's experience contributed to the development of new safety protocols for competitive water sports in areas known to harbor large shark populations. Despite the traumatic nature of her encounter, Sarah eventually returned to competitive water skiing. However, she became a strong advocate for enhanced marine safety education and the use of shark deterrent technology during training activities in areas with known predator populations. By 2011, the Caribbean waters surrounding Belize's Barrier Reef system had established themselves as a premier destination for spearfishing enthusiasts, offering some of the most pristine underwater environments in the Western Atlantic. Carlos Mendoza, a 31-year-old commercial fisherman from San Pedro, had been spearfishing these waters for over 15 years, developing an intimate knowledge of local fish behavior and seasonal migration patterns. His expertise extended beyond simple hunting skills to include a comprehensive understanding of marine ecology, weather patterns, and the complex relationships between predator and prey species that inhabited the reef system. Carlos had launched his expedition from a secluded beach on Ambergris Caye, planning to target yellowtail snapper and grouper populations that gathered around specific coral formations during morning feeding periods. His equipment included a high-quality spear gun, specialized diving gear designed for extended underwater hunting, and safety equipment, including surface marker buoys and emergency signaling devices. The morning dive conditions were exceptional, with water visibility exceeding 30 meters and minimal current, allowing for precise shot placement and easy retrieval of fish. Carlos had selected a particular reef section known for its abundant fish populations, where coral formations created natural ambush points that experienced spearfishers could use to their advantage. Within the first hour of hunting, Carlos had successfully harvested several smaller fish, storing them in a mesh bag secured to his weight belt. His hunting strategy focused on the selective targeting of specific species while avoiding damage to the coral environment that supported the entire ecosystem. The technique required patience and precise positioning to ensure clean kills that would not waste marine resources. Carlos was positioned approximately 15 meters below the surface, carefully stalking a school of yellowtail snapper that had gathered around a large coral head, when the lemon shark appeared from the deeper water beyond the reef edge. The predator, measuring approximately 8 feet in length, displayed the species' characteristic yellowish coloration that provided excellent camouflage against sandy bottom environments. Lemon sharks were known throughout the Caribbean for their curious nature and tendency to investigate unusual activities in their territory, though they rarely showed aggressive behavior toward human divers. This particular individual seemed drawn by the commotion created by Carlos's spearfishing activities, particularly the distressed movements of wounded fish that had been secured in his catch bag. The shark's initial approach was cautious and methodical, circling at a distance of roughly 20 meters while assessing the situation. Carlos noted the predator's presence but continued with his hunting activities, as lemon sharks typically posed minimal threat to experienced divers who maintained calm, deliberate movements and avoided aggressive gestures. The situation escalated when Carlos successfully speared a large yellowtail snapper, the wounded fish's desperate struggling triggering a more intense response from the observing lemon shark. The predator's swimming pattern immediately became more focused and direct, its interest heightened by the injured fish's distress signals. As Carlos moved to secure his catch, the lemon shark approached with surprising speed and determination. Rather than targeting the wounded fish, however, the predator seemed fixated on Carlos's spear itself, possibly mistaking the weapon for another fish or viewing it as competition for the available prey. The shark's jaws clamped down on Carlos's spear shaft with explosive force, its powerful bite easily snapping the aluminum construction of the weapon. The sudden destruction of his primary tool left Carlos momentarily stunned and effectively defenseless in the presence of an increasingly aggressive predator. The lemon shark's behavior became progressively bolder following its successful attack on the spear, with the creature now circling at much closer range while displaying obvious interest in Carlos's catch bag and the blood trail created by his wounded fish. The predator's movements suggested growing confidence and possible preparation for a more direct assault. Carlos attempted to maintain his position near the coral formation, while slowly ascending toward the surface, hoping to reach shallow water where the shark would be less likely to continue its aggressive behavior. The lemon shark, however, seemed determined to investigate further, approaching within mere meters of Carlos's position while snapping at his fins and diving equipment. The predator's closest approach brought it within arm's reach of Carlos, who instinctively extended his free hand to fend off the attack. The contact resulted in immediate abrasions from the shark's rough skin, which was covered in tiny tooth-like scales that could cause significant injury through simple contact. Carlos's defensive movements seemed to confuse the lemon shark temporarily, causing it to retreat several meters before resuming its circular patrol pattern. The predator continued to show intense interest in the blood trail and struggling fish, suggesting that its aggressive behavior was primarily motivated by feeding opportunities rather than territorial defense. Using this brief respite, Carlos began a controlled ascent toward the surface, while maintaining visual contact with the circling shark. His movement pattern was deliberately slow and steady, avoiding sudden gestures that might trigger renewed aggressive behavior from the predator. The lemon shark made several additional approaches during Carlos's ascent, snapping aggressively at his equipment and catch bag while remaining just beyond physical contact range. Each approach seemed to test Carlos's reactions and defensive capabilities, suggesting that the predator was evaluating whether to escalate its attack further. Carlos finally reached the surface approximately 50 meters from his anchored boat, the lemon shark having abandoned its pursuit once he entered water less than 5 meters deep. The predator's departure was as sudden as its initial appearance, with the creature simply disappearing into the blue water beyond the reef edge. The encounter left Carlos with multiple scrapes and abrasions from contact with both the shark's rough skin and the coral formations he had used for protection. While none of his injuries were serious enough to require immediate medical attention, the psychological impact of losing his equipment and narrowly avoiding a more serious attack was considerable. Carlos reported the incident to local fishing authorities, contributing valuable data about lemon shark behavior and the factors that might trigger aggressive interactions with spearfishers. His experience led to the development of new safety recommendations for hunters working in areas with known shark populations, including modifications to equipment and emergency response procedures. Despite the frightening nature of his encounter, Carlos continued spearfishing in the same general area. However, he subsequently invested in shark deterrent technology and modified his hunting techniques to minimize the risk of similar incidents in the future.